there is a war by they, right? You know who they, you know who I'm talking about here. I gotta always watch my language here. There's a war by they on healthy masculinity, the light side of masculinity. Masculinity can manifest in the light side and in the dark side, right? It can be dark, it can be light, it can be constructive, it can be destructive. And a lot of what we've experienced as a planet in the last few thousand years is destructive masculinity. Destructive. Now, we live in a duality, right? Everything is dual, day and night, dark and light, masculine, feminine, right? And even it's like because it's a fractal pattern. Everything is like fractal, and it's the microcosm is part of the macrocosm, and the macrocosm is the microcosm of something else, and on it goes. So even each duality, so light has a dark, has a duality, also has a destructive and constructive side. Again, constructive, destructive is duality, and darkness also has destructive, constructive, and it goes on and on and on and on. Okay, even constructive has like a constructive and a destructive duality. It's all on and on and on it goes. All right, on and on it goes. So if you ever seen those fractal patterns, and they keep sucking you in, and it's the same thing basically, just over and over and over and over. So masculinity, so first of all, a lot of what we've been experiencing in the last few thousand years on the planet is destructive masculinity, right? It's destructive. The masculine asserts, the masculine commands, the masculine asserts and commands, right? So we've had the masculine gives authority, and for the last few thousand years we've had terrible people giving authority, terrible. You want the best example? Genghis Khan, right? Goes on a rampage in the world, kills the Mongol horde, kills like 10% of the world's population. Ridiculous, guys. 10%. Okay, 10% back like 1,000 years ago, right? That's destructive masculinity. All these wars we've been experiencing, destructive masculinity, right? They represent destructive masculinity. Now, they also don't want constructive masculinity whatsoever, and so they attack it. Why? Because the masculinity, the masculine in its light side, in its constructive side, asks questions authority, and rebels against it if it is unfair, if it's unjust. And they don't want that to happen, and that's why they censor the hell out of everything and everyone that dares to question the authority, that dares to question the truth. Because that's actually, if you break it down, that's their biggest fear. Okay, that's their biggest fear. Their biggest fear is that people begin to question, and people begin to rebel against the unfair authority, the destructive masculine. And that's why masculinity, constructive masculinity has been attacked left, right, and center by mainstream media, by everything really, by universities, because universities, why do I say universities? Because universities, a lot of the brainwashing takes place in universities. Okay, a lot of the brainwashing happens in universities, colleges and universities, right? So the entire society is now geared towards attacking the masculine in its constructive side. So they say, oh, violence, right? No more violence, right? Let's take all the guns, right? No more violence, right? Let's cancel anything that to do with violence. Let's cancel, the cancel thing. Let's cancel everything, guys. Let's cancel UFC. Let's cancel fighting, right? And if you ever done martial arts, you know that is, the friendships you form and the respect you have for your opponent, ideally, is a very, in my perspective, a very high degree of constructive masculinity transmuted in a constructive way. I've done martial arts. I've done wrestling in high school. I've done Muay Thai for a little bit. I've done Krav Maga, which is a form of street fighting, and the respect you have for the other, the amount of course, some people, some fighters are very arrogant, and they don't respect their opponent, and they don't respect what they're doing, and they're just, in their head, okay? But, for the most part, there's a great deal of respect between fighters. There's a great deal of, a great deal of respect, a great deal of discipline, all these masculine qualities, right? All these masculine qualities developed through, for instance, the act of martial arts. Now, a lot, in the cancel culture, for instance, they say, "Oh, that's barbaric. Can't have that no more," right? That's barbaric. Look at what all these men are doing to each other. They're ripping each other apart, right? They're like ripping each other apart. So that's all, inappropriate. Can't have that no more. That's barbaric. We're civilized now, right? That's all like forms of numbing down the masculine in its constructive side. Now, of course, yes, when you go and you do some martial arts or any combat sport, there's always the risk of you getting injured, and sometimes these injuries can be debilitating, right? Like life, things that are completely debilitating and lifelong injuries, right? And that's the risk you take when you do things like that. But in the overall scheme of things, it is a positive way of transmuting the masculine energy. By default, as a man a man carries more of the masculine energy, the woman carries more of the feminine energy, generally speaking. And so by default, you have testosterone. That alone makes you more like outgoing, like you have energy that wants to like assert itself. So what better way, for example, than to transmute that in the form of combat sports, where you teach the participants respect, you teach them discipline. All these things are masculine qualities: discipline, respect. You teach them how to respect the opponent. You teach them how to discipline themselves, how to have self-control, how to not panic, how to strengthen your body, how to strengthen your mind. These are all very masculine qualities, right? What better way to transmute it than that? Because if you just let kids be, they're gonna fight each other and bully each other because they're just kind of programmed to transmute their masculinity in a negative way. I grew up in a society where, the Middle East, where there's a lot of destructive masculinity there. So I grew up in a world of bullying and fights. I have fought so much, right? It's unavoidable, really. This is testosterone. Boys will be boys. You've got all this energy, right? So why don't you take these kids off the streets, put them in schools, in martial arts schools, and teach them how to respect one another and how to transmute it in a positive way. I'm giving you one example here. I'm using martial arts as one example. Lots of people say, it's barbaric, right? It's barbaric, can't have that no more. And that's just one way of numbing down, of taking away the power of constructive masculine, right? There's so many different ways. Of course, food, it's all written all over foods. You've got estrogen in our food supply. You've got it in foods, that fucks up the ratio of testosterone to estrogen, and so it takes away from your masculinity. And then another thing, sunlight, right? Sunshine is associated, if you're getting plenty of sunshine and you're eating the right foods, of course, you're gonna have high levels of testosterone. But they tell you put sunscreen on, put sunglasses on, shield yourself from the sun. So there's like a war on the, if we're gonna break it down chemically, on testosterone here. There's a war on testosterone, because if you don't have men grounded in their constructive masculinity, questioning authority, rebelling against authority, and if need be, fighting authority to bring about a more just system, then you have no opposition. Practically, you got no opposition whatsoever, right? The masculine is independent, right? It's independent in thought, it's independent in action. And so if you have a bunch of independent-minded men grounded in their constructive masculinity, the whole system crumbles. The whole system crumbles. So yeah, that's definitely a war going on, and what you can do is you can, you know, simply not be part of that and create your own system and live life in your own way, and get yourself somewhere and grow your own food and put a community together, perhaps, right, of like-minded people that want to live outside of the system, that are aware that the system is attacking them and attacking their masculinity in its constructive side, in its constructive form. And another characteristic of the constructive masculine is protective. It wants to protect nature, wants to protect their loved ones, your partner, your mother, your sister, right? So that's another thing. You know, one of the reasons why they want to take guns from people in the United States is because, you know, they want virtually, they want all the men to be spineless, essentially. Okay, they want no opposition so that they can usher their plans. You know what I'm talking about here. You gotta be careful. My strikes are almost coming off, then I can maybe start to use some of these terms again, but it's better to still be cautious. But you guys know what I'm talking about here. They want a bunch of spineless men, not questioning things, dependent on the system, dependent on the governments, dependent, you know, and not protective of their loved ones. All right, so just be aware of that and continue to ground yourself in your constructive masculinity. Protective wants to justice, protective of the planet, protective of your loved ones, questioning authority, rebelling against it if it's unjust. You know, not all forms of authority is bad, only if it's unjust, if it's unfair, and if it is destructive. And so much of our problems in the last few thousand years is because of destructive masculinity, which is what they represent actually. And they know if they can silence and preferably for them get rid of constructive masculinity altogether, they have no opposition. Alright, so that's my thoughts. This is my 2 Satoshis on the subject. So I want to thank all our beautiful patrons, and I want to thank all the people who donate on PayPal. I love you guys. Thank you for your support. Thank you all. If you want to support us on Patreon, the link is down below in the description. As a token of gratitude for your support, we will transport you over to our Mastermind and Support Telegram group, where we talk about a wide range of things. And you can also message me directly on Telegram if you want to talk about anything. I also do video consultations if you're interested to book a call. There is a link in the description. I love you guys, and until next time, may the force be with you.